Please enjoy this special bonus from the Jimmy Dore Show, Corona Money Talk, Finance and the Economy During the COVID-19 Pandemic, with Jimmy and Dylan Ratigan.
We have a jam-packed show for you today. Jam-packed. We're going to talk about money. Our friend of the show, former host of MSNBC's The Dylan Ratigan Show. He was also an award-winning journalist for Bloomberg. He was a candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives for New York's 21st District. Please welcome to the show Dylan Ratigan. Hi, Dylan. How are you?
Very well, and yourself. Never run for Congress, Jimmy. It's a very bad decision. Don't do that. Take it from me.
Yeah, I know. You didn't seem to be enjoying.
Very bad. It was probably the worst decision of my life, quite honestly. No, seriously. Like the value of having run for Congress is no matter how bad anything gets, at least it's not as bad as running for Congress.
What was so bad about it? The thing I can't take is being nice to people and asking them for money.
Yeah, I mean, well, I basically refused most of that part, which probably was why I didn't win. But so yeah, I have major issues with that, and I guess the thing that really got me was it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Oh, come on!
I guess because I had it in my mind because there was a time when I had more of an expectation of justice or fairness from this country, which obviously I have none of that anymore, so it doesn't matter so much. But there was a time when I actually thought that there was something that was different about America relative to the fundamentally corrupt governments that prevail over every other country in the world, and thought that perhaps anyway. So that was my fault, not the country's or running for Congress's fault. That I even had that illusion. But I don't know it was the year of it. It was one of those situations where it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's basically the I'm not sure how to articulate it without. I don't want to sound. I don't want to sound self-pitying in any way, and it doesn't matter. Honestly, it was the willingness to assassinate people for having penises or skin colors is very high, and everything else doesn't really matter. So. Oh,
okay. I think I hear what you're saying. I think I do.
Like I was attacked as a rapist, misogynist, destroyer of women just by virtue of my gender, without having any actions or facts to back that up. It was just a convenient political tool.
Oh, see, I didn't cover your race that closely. I didn't know that happened to you.
So it's like, Jimmy Dore's running for Congress, and you're a white male with a penis. You're clearly a rapist monster, and you need to be eaten and destroyed.
It's funny how somehow Joe Biden is making it past this. So it's amazing how the same people who probably
it's impressive. It is impressive. I would say Joe Biden's success is the end of Me Too.
Well, obviously it is, because the people who are pushing Me Too are now backing him, and it's been revealed that the Me Too movement was nothing more than a partisan tool. And
even more than that, it was an indulgence in unilateral power. The tragedy of Joe Biden's destroying of the Me Too movement is that there is a huge issue with sexual assault. There is a huge issue with sexual oppression. There is the underlying issue of Me Too is a real thing, and the manipulation of that real problem as a way to acquire power and destroy and advance an agenda by those in charge of it's like exploiting slavery as a way to accumulate power. So you had all these people that started exploiting the reality of the sexual issues and the sexual oppression and the sexual assault and the unequal pay. Very real, very disastrous, very destructive, very bad things that were harnessed by people to project unilateral power to destroy and do whatever they want to do, that they then expose themselves as the craven fools that they are. Fools, too generous a word, in a way that there's sort of like there's a disgust, I guess, in the revelation of the hypocrisy, but the unspoken victim in all this is still all the women who are being abused and underpaid because they've now been exploited by the Alyssa Milanos of the world as a way for them to accumulate power and make a celebrity out of themselves. Do you understand?
Yes.
Like, forget whether Joe Biden or whatever. The real victim here is actual female victims who are then manipulated by these women who claim to be fighting for female victims, but really they were just trying to get power.
Yes. And that is transparently manifest. That it doesn't take a genius to see that's exactly what was happening. That is exactly what was happening, and now a lot of people are saying it, and you're being one of them. And it's exactly right. The everyone has a concern for this for the issue that they're raising, but the way they used it was nefarious. So, and you weren't the only one, lots of people. So I didn't know about that. But anyway, I didn't mean to bring up a sore subject.
No. I mean, I ultimately, again, CNN put there was I have the good fortune of having no skeletons in my closet, so to speak. So even after CNN and all the beat reporters were looking for anything they could find, anyway. It has nothing. It's just a cult. It was a real, meaningful, significant issue in society was being used and has been used as a cheap political power tool to advance people's careers and destroy other people's careers. And Joe Biden is now if Harvey Weinstein started Me Too, Joe Biden ended it.
Yes. Okay.
Anyway, that's not why we're here today.
That's not why we're here today.
How did this happen?
That's not why we're here today. Say, hang on, I have to fix my chair. My chair is a little messed up. No.
What's wrong with your chair?
My chair is it's breaking.
Are you uncomfortable?
So it's falling down. It's not at the proper height. And so I have to put an extra cushion on it, and then that's actually uncomfortable, 2 cushions. Which is why people have been commenting like Jimmy.
Maybe you need like a cushion and a half.
Yeah, I just need a chair that actually is just functioning correctly. That my chair's about 3 years old, so it's not working anymore. But anyway, that's enough of the technical problems. Let's move on. So let's start talking about. So you're the financial guru. You know all there is to know about the ins and outs of how money works, and so that's why we have you here, especially during the coronavirus. Now, what we had been talking about, tell me if this is what we had been talking about how this stimulus package that left out workers, that left out families, that has no UBI, that has no health care attached to it, no bailout for cities or states. So anyway, it was just a giveaway, trillions of dollars to the already richest people in the country, the oligarchs who control our country. And now because we're going into a depression because of the economy shutdown, every piece of property and every asset, every business is going to be available for sale at fire sale prices. And who has all the money? Well, the oligarchs just got $5 trillion from the government. And regular people like us don't have any money. So the income inequality is going to get even worse. We're living at income inequality levels since the Gilded Age right now. Okay. So that's how bad it is in America. It's going to get way worse. And here's proof of what we've been predicting here. This is the Capitol Forum tweeted this out. Walgreens, CVS Health CVS Health step up buyout offers during pandemic. That's the headline. Walgreens and CVS Health step up buyout offers during the pandemic. And then it says the number 1 and 2 drugstore chains in the United States are accelerating efforts during the coronavirus outbreak to buy out rival independent pharmacies upended by the economic turmoil the pandemic has caused, the pharmacist said. Isn't this exactly what we predicted, Dylan, that there's going to be...
we discussed this explicitly. You remember when you and I really started having these regular conversations of whatever it was, 4 to 6 weeks ago with the beginning of the pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked explicitly about exactly this, how there's a biological crisis and then there's the economic crisis, which is the collapse in demand from the lockdown. Then there's the risk of the financial crisis with the collapse of the banks, which was mitigated by the trillions at the Fed. And then You now have the social crisis percolating, and it will continue to grow. And then one of the contributing, and then we're on the brink of what will be some degree of a housing crisis. Hopefully, it won't be that bad. Honestly, I want to believe that there'll be reasons it won't be that bad, but that is obviously on the table. And so, but compare what you just said, which is that the big oligopoly drug companies are looking to use this opportunity to hoover up whatever's left, whatever crumbs of independent small business are left, as the fraudulent PPP is out there to support quote unquote small business, which is beyond comical. But set all that aside, this is exactly what we predicted, and I asked you to put that in comparison to what the government in the Netherlands said at the beginning of the lockdown. They said if there was a healthy business before we shut down this economy because of a biological crisis, the government and the bank's job is to make sure that those businesses, are intact when this is over. Yes. These are not businesses. These are not small independent pharmacies that recklessly borrowed trillions to go buy yachts and airplanes and blow all the money, right? These are regular, normal flow businesses. These are businesses like every restaurant in America. Like, I can go down the list. I mean, we all know everything that's locked down that have been annihilated. The hotels, on down the line, that have been annihilated by the lockdowns through no fault of their own. Jimmy Dore, by the way, can't do stand-up anymore, right? And along with all the other entertainers in this country, you're fortunate that you have such a big digital platform so you can actually, still provide access to your audience and still have a working economy around you. But the point is, in America, the political and government decision is explicit and implicitly to give money to the wealthiest institutions to roll assets up as a way to exploit a biological crisis that was no fault of the people that are being victimized by it. It's bad enough that they did this in 2008 and 9, where they gave the richest and the most powerful all the money to roll up all the distressed assets, as they did in the financial crisis. They repeated that again in the face of a biological crisis. I mean, I cannot think of a more putrid and disgusting thing for a group of people to do. I mean, it's no different than robbing someone while their house is on fire. So your house gets struck by lightning. You're trying to put the fire of your house out from the lightning strike, and then the government, instead of helping you put out the fire, comes in and steals all your stuff. And people get mad at me because they refuse. They get upset that I don't want to perpetuate the myth of America as having some differential. Again, the Russian government's not particularly nice to their people either. Neither is the Chinese government, even the Mexican government. Heck, the European governments are a little bit overblown in terms of their perceived glory. I mean, the EU really is a club for rich people. There aren't really European countries. There's, as we discussed last fall, the group of the super rich that sort of are countryless, and then everybody else that sort of is left to fend for themselves. But I never thought I would see the day where a biological crisis would be manipulated and used by American politicians to empower the rich to raid the rest of the country.
Well, it would be one thing.
It's incomprehensible.
Well,
if I told you, you'd be like, no way. But yeah, actually, yeah.
So it's starting. So here it is. It's starting. Walgreens and CVS, the number one and number two pharmacies, are starting to buy up all the small pharmacies. So again, small businesses are going away, and that was part of the plan. And the thing that kills me, Dylan, is that Jake Tapper a couple days ago was interviewing Nancy Pelosi, and he finally said, hey, you didn't get anything that Democrats wanted in this bill, and now you're all going home. Isn't that a tactical mistake? And Nancy Pelosi told Jake Tapper to calm down. And guess what Jake Tapper did? He calmed down.
Did he calm down?
He did.
Yeah.
He shut up. He did not have a follow-up question. And so what do you make of this unbelievable, like you're saying this is unbelievable fleecing of America, but it's happening with the blessing of Bernie Sanders, every one of the Justice Democrats, and Nancy Pelosi. They're doing this to America, and there doesn't seem to be a level of...
You got to be a moron to expect anything from the Democrats. I mean, I don't know who I mean,
but no,
the Democrats have been showing you who they are since Bill Clinton. With all due respect, I don't know. I don't know what kind of person you have to be to expect a Democrat to do anything other than be sanctimonious, hypocritical, and then rob you. Republicans are more likely to rob you with a knife in front of you. The Democrats are more likely to serve you some expensive ice cream and then steal everything when you're out of the room.
No, but
the Democrats are more. The Republicans are aggressive. Democrats are passive aggressive. They're both in the same business of taking all the resources from everybody for themselves and those who sponsor them. I mean, that's a known fact in America.
That's not
Joe Biden versus Donald Trump is America's Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. Pick your senile rapist. I mean, are you really serious?
So I know you're wrong about this, Dylan, because Chomsky told me there's a big difference. There's a big difference. Just like there was a big
between the senile rapist.
Yeah, that's what he says. He says you're immoral if you don't vote for Joe Biden. It's a joke what's happening. It's a nuts. And again, I don't know how Chomsky could talk about this, what the Democrats are doing during the stimulus, and then with a straight face tell you have to vote for one of them. It's instead of telling people what you need to do is get in the streets right now and overthrow your government, he's telling people to use a voting strategy, which hasn't worked ever. Anyway,
they canceled the election in New York, Jimmy.
I know.
I mean, they canceled the election. So you know what happens when you cancel an election in one of the most powerful, richest, and most populous states in America that houses the most populous and most powerful city, arguably in the world?
What?
It surely sets the table for Donald Trump to cancel the election in November. Now that the virus is an excuse not to vote.
So people are saying, no, that's not true.
The Democrats did it first. So what are you going to do?
I know, because that's what it looks like. But what the Democrats are saying is, no, that would only apply if Joe Biden dropped out of the race and endorsed Donald Trump, which is what Bernie Sanders has done, which is why they're saying they're canceling it. Do you see that logic?
I don't care what the logic is.
Right.
I'm allowed to go into as a registered voter in New York State, which I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm entitled to go into a voting booth and vote for Mickey Mouse if I want.
Right.
I can write in whatever I want. Once you take away my ability to vote, period, you have suspended even the thinnest veil, the thinnest illusion of democracy, which obviously this country is not a democracy, so it's sort of preposterous. In some ways, it's better that they did cancel the election so that we can just get out of this whole word democracy thing.
Yes, I honestly agree with that.
I think it'd be less frustrating. I mean, the nice thing in China or Russia is people don't get animated about these things because they don't have they're like, of course. They're not saying they're expecting it to function and then being outraged when it doesn't function. They know it doesn't function. So they don't waste so much emotional bandwidth on the dysfunction because they never were led to believe that it should function.
Okay, so I know, Dylan, I know, and you know.
I sound worse than you this week, Jimmy. I feel like I've taken a Jimmy pill. I'm usually the optimist.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But as I still peruse the news media and I watch more progressive news than anything. They still don't seem to understand what's happening. They don't understand what's coming. They're treating what's happening right now as just another vote. No one is animated. No one is holding the progressives' feet to the fire at all. It's kind of remarkable to see. The most we could get is, hey, they should have voted the other way. So I've been sounding the alarm here.
Meanwhile, they're torching the economy. There are 26 million people out of work. There's the lockdown, which should have been done a long time before it was done and should be lifted sooner than it was, is being now extended forever for the political convenience of doing it. There's the absence of testing, the absence of all the things that are required to actually allow the society to function is political malfeasance on a level that's beyond catastrophic. And it ultimately takes us to why you're going to see a collapse or a potential collapse in the housing market and a significant restructuring in who owns what as they roll the money up into to the hands of the smallest possible group of people, which is what happened in Russia after 1989.
So, Dylan, just tell me that. So I know I'm going to be naive, but
all right. You've been watching Rocky movies or something?
Yes, but so while they give the $5 trillion to the richest people and they and they leave everybody else out.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it help them to give everybody health care and a UBI? It wouldn't hurt. They would still be able to take over every business in the country and they could still give everybody health care and a UBI, right?
Right, but if they did the UBI and the Medicare for all, which you and I, that should have been done in the first 5 minutes, right?
Right.
But if you do that, you then have to forfeit the fraudulent myth of the sovereign alpha American who can take care of himself and gets business done and is the ultimate creator and the ultimate doer, that American entrepreneur. Even though the number of new businesses that are formed in this country is at an all-time low, even though social mobility in this country is at an all-time low. But there is a fraudulent myth of the sovereign cowboy badass American who doesn't need help from anybody and can take care of himself. And once you do UBI and Medicare for all, you're acknowledging that we're a group of people that can share basic resources in a way that's better for all of us. And you can still be a wild, badass entrepreneur cowboy with In fact, you'll be a much more of a wild-ass, badass cowboy entrepreneur if you had UBI and Medicare for all, because you wouldn't have to lose your health care when you quit your job, and you'd have a little bit of foam on the runway while you were building your idea. Ironically, nothing could be more supportive of the sovereign myth of the American cowboy entrepreneur than Medicare for all and UBI. But you asked me a question, which is why are they not doing it? I think the reason they're not doing it is because of the propaganda around self-sufficiency and self-sovereignty that is uniquely American and deeply fraudulent.
But again, May 1st is coming, June 1st is coming. People don't have money to pay their rent. They're already a third of Americans miss their rent payment April 1st. So I don't know. I had someone on the show saying rent strikes are going to be meaningless because they're going to happen by default. And so, Americans don't have any savings. Everyone's living paycheck to paycheck. So when they lose their paycheck, they lose their ability to pay their debt services to their credit cards, their student loans, their rent, their mortgages. So I just don't understand. I don't understand.
What you're saying is even as dastardly as their plan may be,
yes,
that it's also they're also dumb is what you're saying, that you could perpetuate this dastardly plan in a way that's less stupid. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, so they are lighting the wick of social unrest. They are, and why wouldn't they want to keep everybody tamped down while they buy up the country and enjoy the $5 trillion they got? Why wouldn't they? It's just like Roosevelt said. Hey, if you don't give them some of your money, they're going to take all of your money, and they don't. So they need someone to tell them that.
I think they do.
So I think so. Okay, well, riots will be starting. And I can't wait.
Not even funny.
It's not. It's right. What are people going to do when they're already not having money to buy groceries? So we already saw what happened in Sicily. People went to the grocery store.
Think about Occupy, whatever it was in 2011.
Yeah,
I suspect that what's coming is going to make people are going to be wishing for Occupy.
Yeah, because what's going to happen is. It's not just the Occupy people who are going to be pissed off. If you notice, a lot of right-wingers with a lot of guns are also out of work. and they're going to also be pissed off. And would you want to be a cop going to kick somebody out of their apartment when you know they're heavily armed in the middle of a fucking depression? I don't think that's going to work out very well. So I think you're right. It's going to get Mad Maxy around here. And, well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if you're saying that. And I just
I'm
can't.
Not ready to go Mad Max. I hold out hope for a test, something, there's some scientific asymmetrical event that cuts this whole thing short. But
it's just stunning that they just won't take care of the people. Nancy Pelosi goes on TV and she spanks the journalists, the guys who are interviewing her. She puts them in their place and they behave. They obey themselves. Jake Tapper got his mind right. It's amazing to watch this happen. There is no one this show is the only one I've seen that is screaming about what's actually happening and what's about to come. Literally no one else is saying this, and no one else is holding their progressive politicians' feet to the fire at all. The most we can get is someone saying, "Oh, Bernie should have voted against this stimulus," or they should have.
I honestly see the most of it on the populist right, other than you.
Yeah.
I don't see it on the left at all.
But
I do see it on the populist right because they're aware of what's happening in terms of the overt, reckless, and explicit economic destruction that is being rendered upon this country by the idiocy of its political leadership. And so I actually see more of it on the populist right. And then you. Maybe that's why one of the Trump advisors reached out to me and asked if he could come on your show because he was starting to agree with you.
Yeah, that's pretty tricky. That's pretty tricky. Because Trump is also.
I told you Trump's a better bet for Medicare for all and UBI than the Democrats.
Well, that's what I've been telling people, and people keep saying, "No, we have a chance to influence Biden. We don't have a chance to influence Trump." And I'm just like, you guys have been wrong about everything since you were born, and so I'm pretty sure you're wrong about this too. And they are.
Biden created the healthcare system with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama that's so catastrophically ill-equipped that it can't even test people for a virus 4 months after the fact in the face of the biggest economic catastrophe in the history of the world. And the $4 trillion Clinton, Obama, Biden healthcare apparatus is belly up, useless.
Useless. But Nancy Pelosi
charging a fortune from everybody in this country while still leaving them with deductibles. I mean, keeping them hostage to their jobs or taking their health care away because they're getting laid off. Everything that you complain about in healthcare, whether it's the deductible, whether it's the accessibility, whether it's the employment, everything, all of it was created by Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton. You think Joe Biden's going to help you out?
And this is the point, by the way.
Not that Donald Trump's going to help you out, but Donald Trump is such a beliefless, psychotic idiot that he might do something that's useful for somebody just by accident.
Yeah, I know.
Joe Biden is strategically hostile.
I agree with you. I know. And all the people telling me
Donald Trump is a catastrophic, nefarious, fascist moron, but he might accidentally do something that helps you because he doesn't care either way.
That's exactly
all
right.
He cares about is how he feels.
He has no ideology. Donald Trump doesn't care if he instituted Medicare for all or not. It doesn't matter to him.
Well, what matters to him is his own pleasure. Right? As long as he feels good, he'll do it. Joe Biden is a calculated monster, along with the rest of But I mean, people say, "Oh, how can you call these guys a monster?" You like the American healthcare system, paying twice as much as everybody in the world, and when there's a global pandemic, there's absolutely nothing. We can't even run a test. So you got to lock everybody in their house and destroy the whole economy. Come on.
I'm with you. Again, I'm glad to hear you getting upset. I hate it when I'm the only one.
I was trying to be. Now you got me worked up. I was doing a good job being calm and disinterested and dispassionate, Jimmy. I'm a little heated up today. I'm sorry.
I know. No, it's good. Dylan Ratigan. So here's a story that's from today. This is from Dave Dayan over at the American Prospect. his column is called Unsanitized, and he says Unsanitized today leads off with mortgages and how servicers are knowingly lying to their customers to try to trap them into foreclosures, just like they did after 2008. So here's he predicts there's going to be the second wave is a foreclosure wave, and it's going to be an enormous problem. And he links some copy from one of the quote-unquote servicers, AmeriHome, and what they're doing. Right. So here, I'm just going to read to you what it says. It says AmeriHome, a private equity-backed mortgage servicer on the receiving end of federal relief for servicers recently authorized by Ginnie Mae and GSE regulator FHFA, is telling borrowers they must pay back all missed payments in a balloon payment due immediately after the CARES Act forbearance. So his next tweet says, the FHFA says this: the repayment approach you shared is not consistent with the enterprise's guidance to approved servicers, meaning that mortgage servicer is lying to people, saying they have to make this 3-month payment all at once, a balloon payment. And so Dave Dayen says this about that. He says, those of us who have done some work on foreclosures over the years know that what mortgage companies tell their borrowers only has a passing relationship to the truth. After the financial crisis, borrowers were told that they had to miss 3 payments to get any relief under the government's loan modification program. Now, Graham Elwood talks about that all the time, but he had a house, and he was told that by 2 different administrations, that he had to miss 3 payments. And then my brother also was told the same thing in his house in Chicago. He was told he had to miss payments. And so why did they do that? Because this was not true. You did not have to miss payments. Nothing required this. And those who did what they were told gave their servicing company the ability to trap them in debt and take their home away. So when I started hearing from borrowers that they were being told that they could apply for 3 months forbearance, a deferment of their loan payment, but would have to pay all 3 months back at the end of the period, my ears pricked up. By the way, we were told the same thing by our bank. Okay. Second of all, here's AmeriHome Mortgage, a private equity-backed firm, telling customers about a lump sum payment immediately due at the end of 3 months, and this isn't limited to them. I've heard from Wells Fargo customers the same thing as well. So just so everyone knows, I want everyone to know this who's watching the show and you have a mortgage. The forbearance period authorized by the CARES Act is actually 6 months. It's not 3 months. It's actually 6 months, which could be re-upped to a year. So I wasn't sure where the 3-month number came from. The balloon payment also didn't sound right. This is Dave Dayen talking. Why would telling borrowers they have to repay a lump sum help servicers? So that's the big question. Why are they lying? Why are they telling people this? Well, he says presumably knowing that they couldn't repay in 3 months, borrowers would opt out of the forbearance program. They would then either A, scrape together enough money to pay their loan for a while, at which point the servicers get paid, or B, cut their losses and go into foreclosure, at which point servicers get to assess all kinds of foreclosure fees and get paid more. So, Dylan, what Dave Dayen is saying is that there's going to be a foreclosure crisis happening. And what is actually happening right now is exactly what happened during the crisis in 2008, is that mortgage servicers, banks, or what have you, are telling their customers a lie. And the reason they're telling them a lie is so that they can then trap them and steal their home away from them. Like in the last crisis, they said, don't make a payment for 3 months. And then when you didn't, they used that saying you defaulted on your loan. And then they took your house away from you, even though they gave you the advice to do that. So now they're doing it again. Now, Dylan, this seems nuts to me. And tell me, how does this happen and how come no one's in jail?
I mean, it happens because policy is made by people who have an interest in consolidating resources in America and consolidating the housing stock is the single most significant and most widely distributed resource in America. And our politicians have decided to utilize the biological crisis, the house on fire, in order to rob everybody blind.
So let me just say,
didn't we just go over that?
Yeah, so I'll just hit the last paragraph that I'll read to you from his article. He says, servicers, meaning mortgage companies, get paid more from foreclosures, so they try to trigger it, steering borrowers.
Of course. Not only that, but then the private equity firms can buy the houses cheaper. The government will then gives them the money to buy the house, and then they can then rent it out for years to come. I mean, the people with money make way more money on foreclosures than they do on a bunch of houses having value.
That's obvious.
The government gives Blackstone the government takes your money, your tax money. They give your tax money to Blackstone or any of the private equity firms. The private equity firms stand behind the servicer. The servicer sets up the foreclosure, then picks up the foreclosure. They make more money. Then the private equity firm comes in with your tax money given to them by the trillion in the bailout. They buy the house at a discount in the foreclosure, and then they rent it out for years to come at a huge yield. Like they figured out how to do this in 2008 and 9. They did it masterfully. The biggest landlord in the world now is Blackstone as a result of 2008 and 9 because they were given the money to roll up all the assets. Steve Schwarzman, who runs Blackstone, is one of the chief advisors to the current president of the United States. And the biological crisis is an opportunity to do a huge real estate roll-up.
So people don't know this. Barack Obama, so when they did this and Blackstone bought up all these rental properties, they found out it's very hard to service rental properties on a mass scale. And they were actually going to go bankrupt. And Barack Obama gave them a bailout on his way out of office. So what he did, Barack Obama, not only screwing people on the front end of his administration, but as he walked out the door, he screwed them again. And how does that screw people, Jimmy? Well, what that does is it consolidates real estate in the hands of Blackstone. And so now Blackstone can artificially keep the prices of those rental properties high, even though they're bankrupt, because the government just gave them more of your tax money to stay profitable. And so now it impedes first-time home buyers' ability to buy a home, and it keeps rents artificially high, also screwing the renter. Barack Obama did that on his way out of office. And now the guy who's the head of Blackstone is in Trump's, he's one of his advisors. So there, again, this idea that there's a difference between voting for Barack Obama or John McCain or Mitt Romney is just a fantasy to make us feel better. So let me just ask you, what do you think is going to happen this time? Are they going to kick 5.1 million people out of their house this time?
Given I mean, they're going to try like hell.
And Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer will not do anything. And as we've seen, Bernie Sanders will vote for it if they try to kick you out of your house. He'll vote for it if he's told to.
But then they'll give a hell of a speech.
And then they'll give a speech, and AOC will wave her arms around.
Yeah, it'll be amazing. And the AOC's video will circulate everywhere. People will say how hard she tried and how she voted no in the voice vote.
Yeah, how she voted no in the voice vote, which is an obvious lie.
Yeah.
Okay, so
this is a country that cancels elections and offers you two senile rapists as a choice for president.
I mean,
lower your expectations. California's beautiful. Look at how beautiful where you live is. Look at how beautiful your yard is. Look at how beautiful the weather is. North America is a beautiful continent where there's largely really fabulous people here, many very nice people here, whether it's in Los Angeles or New York or Texas or Florida or wherever. And I would recommend everybody be a little nicer and enjoy themselves and completely lower your expectations from the U.S. government to the point of fact they are hostile to you. They are hostile to everybody in this country, left or right.
I know, and it's just.
But that doesn't mean we have to be miserable. It just means we need to not expect anything other than hostility from our government. But there's more to life than government. There's dancing, there's cooking, there's music, there's racing cars, there's running.
Yeah, but
there's watching movies.
It's hard to enjoy
going to the beach.
It's hard to enjoy any of that stuff if you have an empty stomach.
That's 100% true.
You know, who was it who said...
this is a country that's taking food and throwing it away.
Yes, that's right, right now. Well, who was it who said that any society is 3 meals away from a revolution? Somebody, I think I'm butchering that, but... All right, so let's move on. Next story. This will be a complicated recovery for Airbnb. People bought homes, then rent them on Airbnb. Like, this has become a cottage industry for people. They're not renting out a room in their house. They're now buying properties and renting them out through Airbnb as their income. And now they can't make the mortgage payments, and so they put homes into rental markets at half the price. Cities see new rental inventory and housing costs go down. Now what? So here's a quick story from the Wall Street Journal. It says Airbnb saw $1.5 billion in bookings vanish in mid-March. Hosts brought with them, and so there's a trickle effect. For instance, Airbnb hosts brought with them cleaning services, interior designers, property maintenance workers who helped build miniature property empires, so their plight has ripple effects that go far beyond their own listings. Though most real estate economists say there are too few Airbnb properties to ignite a housing crisis, the breakdown of the Airbnb economy could strain lenders, undermine property values, and validate some local governments' long-held suspicions that Airbnbs contribute to the affordable housing crisis. Now, do you agree with that, Dylan, by the way, that Airbnbs are contributing?
I absolutely do, and I think there's no better validation to the hostility that Airbnb has created for accessible housing in America's cities than the fact that suddenly there is a much bigger inventory of housing at a lower rental rate because of the lockdown and the collapse at Airbnb. So Airbnb's argument that they're not part of the housing crisis, let's say in San Francisco or in 1,000 other cities around the world, is just nothing more than Silicon Valley BS. And part of the reason why there's, marginal, this is a lesser issue, but there's a marginal issue. There'll be a marginal issue in certain markets in real estate simply because of the Airbnb collapse.
So say that again. There'll be a what?
There'll be the same way the foreclosure issue will affect some places. Like there are places where Airbnb is a meaningful piece of the housing economy. Huge sections of tourist cities and whatnot.
Yes.
Where that's going to further exacerbate the housing crisis.
Okay. All right. So moving on more.
Bear in mind, a failing housing market, by the way, also affects the banks because you know who actually owns all the houses in America?
The banks, right?
The banks.
Yeah.
Whether they own half of the house, 3/4 of the house,
right,
10% of the house, depending on the size of the mortgage. No one owns more U.S. housing than the banks.
Okay. So
My point is, you get a housing crisis, all of a sudden you're back up against a potential banking crisis.
Right. So AirDNA estimates that a third of Airbnb's U.S. listings for entire homes or apartments, excluding shared rooms, are by hosts with a single property. Another third, so they break it up into three. Another third are run by hosts with between 2 and 24 properties. And the remaining third involve hosts with more than 25 properties. So only a third of Airbnb people are people who have a house and they rent out a room. 2/3 of Airbnb is these businesses, people who buy houses specifically to rent them out. And they own between 2 and 24 properties. And then another third of Airbnb hosts own more than 25 properties.
Incredible.
Nearly 1 in 5 hosts that Airbnb recently surveyed said hosting on the platform helped them avoid eviction or foreclosure. So the company presented these findings to the U.S. congressional leaders and successfully lobbied, get this, Airbnb successfully lobbied to have hosts covered under the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, known as the CARES Act, making them potentially eligible for small business loans and unemployment assistance, among other things. So there you go. So that's what's happening with Airbnb. And what do you think about, so what was originally invented as an idea to help people supplement their income by renting out an empty room in their house or apartment is now turned into you're going to get bailed out. They're full-fledged companies, and they're
the thing is, for me, this is just a window into Silicon Valley and the sanctimony valley, and the arrogance of the technologists in San Francisco that run this propaganda of their saving of the world, as whether it's Facebook or Airbnb or Uber, they're arguably as predatory or more predatory than the U.S. government or the U.S. banks in New York. They do not. These are organizations that, rather than creating value for people, they're all vampires, and they're extremely efficient, well-organized vampires.
But you got to feel sorry for these poor folks with all their rental properties. Am I right? I mean, come on. I don't know.
Well, of course, but they were incentivized by this platform to get into this whole racket.
Right, I know.
Of course, you feel bad for them.
I know.
I mean, if I'm going to feel bad for the Airbnb people, I also got to feel bad for Hilton and Marriott and Hotel Planner and all the airlines.
Right.
Every airline, every hotel operator, and every Airbnb operator in the world has been annihilated.
Man.
Not just by the virus, but by the absurd and disastrous political management and failure to test by our government, which is the real issue. The mismanagement of the virus is the actual problem, not the virus.
So, do you think we'd be better off if we were handling it the way Sweden is handling it? And the way Sweden is handling it is they have not shut down their government. What they're doing is telling people who are vulnerable to quarantine themselves. But they haven't closed their schools. Their restaurants are open now. People, everything is nothing's crowded, but stuff is still open. And the question we raised last time we talked is that the economic devastation is going to cause real pain and hunger and death. And death. So now if the death rate is going to be higher from the economic destruction than the death rate would be from the coronavirus, does it make sense to shut down an economy? And Sweden is not shutting it down. What do you know about how Sweden's handling it, and what's your opinion?
I mean, I know this probably, you've probably read the same amount of content on the subject. I have no deep insight into Sweden. I know there's a calculus on the loss of life and on the destruction of resources from the lockdown that has to be weighed against the death rate. But I also know that if you are prepared for something, a pandemic is not a surprise. This is not a black swan. Okay, this is something that has been known and talked about for years and decades. And so then to sit here after the fact, and it's when you drive a ship and you have no fire extinguisher and no lifeboats and no life preservers, and then everybody's in the water without a life preserver and the ship is sunk. You know it's to talk about what you should have done. What you should have done has been ready for a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
What are we paying taxes for? What's the DOD doing? What are you doing all day? What are they doing? What are you people doing in your jobs? At CDC, at Health and Human Services, at Department of Defense, at FEMA. We pay all this tax money. What are you preparing for? And so I think it's unfair for any of us to sit here after the fact, after the colossal failure to prepare for a known risk, We're certainly happy to show off our airplanes, our F-14s, or F-18s, but we're not ready for this. It's staggering.
It's staggering.
So now you're going to give me this awful choice between, do we let more people die and destroy the economy, or do we take our chances with the virus? Obviously, at this point, in my opinion, the more economic activity that can be resurrected, the sooner the better. That requires widespread testing. It requires masks. It requires distancing. Everybody in the world at this point knows that. You've shut down the economy, not just locally, globally, for months now. And still, after months, you still don't have testing. And then all of a sudden the question is, should we be like Sweden? Well, no, we shouldn't be like Sweden. We shouldn't be in this decision. We should be able to open with widespread testing, masks, and distancing. But we can't because our government's too busy taking our tax money to fund private equity to roll up rental properties instead of preparing for known risks like global pandemics. Now I'm pissed.
Yeah, got you going.
Now you pissed me off. And I was really doing a good job not being pissed the past couple months.
Dylan, I'm like you. I can't, what even drives me, people tell me when they watch my show that this show keeps them sane because I'm expressing the rage outwardly that they feel inwardly, and they don't see it in anyone else, so that they feel crazy. I feel crazy, right? So it makes me feel better that you're actually getting upset about this because no one else seems to be upset about this. AOC will yell about it, and we all know that's theater, but no one's actually
grandstanding.
That's grandstanding.
She's like a pop star.
Yes, she's like the J-Lo of the Congress.
Of politics. Yeah.
Of politics. She is.
That's why she's AOC, baby. She's transcended the need for a name. Her and Madonna and J-Lo.
You're right. So it's actually comforting to hear you get upset like this because no one else is getting upset. It's just stunning for me to watch. Of course, I turn on MSNBC and they're just talking about bleach and Trump telling you to drink bleach, and
blaming Trump all the time.
That's it.
It's like blaming the village moron.
Yes.
Of course, Trump's a moron.
I know.
Who cares?
That's what I told my brother the other day. I'm like, you got to stop watching the press conferences. You're going to get, they air those so it pisses you off, so it keeps you distracted from the real problem. And the real problem is Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are not an opposition party. They're in bed with Wall Street, and you can't serve Wall Street and serve workers at the same time, which is why they don't serve workers, which is why we're in a third world country situation and a banana republic where nobody has any money except a handful of people. And pretty soon there's going to be social unrest. I'm actually I will be covering it, maybe even participating. Let's move on. Another story.
As long as you wear a mask.
Another story. Elizabeth Warren, did you know this? Elizabeth Warren and AOC have teamed up on a new proposal to halt big mergers during the coronavirus pandemic. So I just showed you how CVS and Rite Aid are buying up all the independent drugstores that are going bankrupt during coronavirus. And so AOC and Elizabeth Warren, they know this is coming, just like we know it's coming. We've been talking about it for a month straight now. So they are now introducing a bill that is supposed to halt mergers. So the consolidation that they just enabled by voting for the trillions of dollars to go to the oligarchs and nothing to go to the people. Now they know what's coming because they just voted for it. And so now they're going to try and mitigate the damage, which it's going to be, I guarantee you 100% it will not pass. So here's what it says. It says, Warren sees private equity vultures looking to gobble up small businesses. AOC warns of decades-long economic consequences of inaction for consumers. So what do you make of this?
Well, first of all, that's idiotic. Because private equity firms do not give a damn about small businesses, okay? Private equity firms care about distressed, medium, and even large businesses. They're managing hundreds of billions of dollars. Do you think Blackstone wants to buy up your corner deli? It's idiotic. The very phrasing offends my sensibilities because it's an insight to the level of stupidity of American politicians that they would be so moronic as to think that private equity would give a damn about buying a small business. They're going to buy the biggest possible business they can buy that's in the most possible distress. You idiots. And the grandstanding around small business is so played out. First of all, small business is not the engine of job growth anywhere. New business formation is the job growth creator. And yes, statistically, most new businesses are small. So people then perceive small businesses to be the job creator, but that is not the case. New business formation is the job creator in any economy ever. In order to have new business formation, you need to have an educational system that works, a healthcare system that works, optimism in the economy, and some amount of money available to human beings. And the rate of new business formation in America has been in a free fall since Barack Obama, since the financial crisis. Okay? And so this whole no M&A thing from Warren and AOC, as if they're going to gobble up small businesses, one, reveals how stupid these people are, and two, reveals how craven and hypocritical they are, that they then vote for a bill that empowers private equity to buy distressed assets while they shut down an economy that shouldn't be shut down because they should have been prepared for the damn pandemic months ago, years ago. And then they want credit for looking out for the little guy. Fuck them.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's exactly what they're doing. They just gave the money to the criminals to go screw us, and now they say, "Wait, we're trying to look out for the little guy."
No, it's worse. It's worse. There's a known risk of a pandemic. They refuse to prepare for the pandemic. They then grossly mismanage the pandemic and point to the village moron as if it's only his fault. After harvesting our tax money for a decade and failing to prepare for the pandemic, blaming the village moron, they then use the pandemic to give the money to the vultures, and then walk out after the whole thing is done and pretend that they give a damn. I prefer Republicans. Republicans come right up to your face and say, "I think you should be dead and I want all your money."
Well, that's what Malcolm X said. He said he preferred,
as opposed to these people.
Yeah.
Pretending. It's like the women that pretended to care about sexual assault.
Yep.
So that they could advance their careers. And in the process, made women more vulnerable to sexual assault.
Yep. You are correct. So this is all. So this by Elizabeth Warren and AOC is complete bullshit, is what you're saying.
That's right. The very premise is idiotic. If you are in the business of getting a return on $10 billion, and I give you the opportunity to buy the local dry cleaner for $85,000, and that dry cleaner, after you buy it, becomes worth $200,000, and you've more than doubled your money, and you just made $100,000 on your $85,000. The cost of the accounting and tax services of dealing with the nightmare of that small business relative to the return on your $10 billion fund is the most preposterous concept I've ever heard in my life.
So
if you have a lot of money and you're paid to make money on that money, you know what you got to do? You got to buy other things that are worth a lot of money.
So, Dylan, let me ask you, who is going to buy the corner deli? Because right now CVS and Rite Aid are buying the corner.
Nobody. the drugstores are different because it's a generic. There's not a national phenomenon of corner delis, right?
Right.
You're going to see a lot of empty storefronts. The drugstore is a unique thing because it is a universally used, guaranteed customer base, monopoly, basically, right? You're going to get your prescription. You're going to buy soap and toothpaste, shampoo. That's a unique situation. Empty storefronts.
So I was saying,
small towns across America that have little or no virus risk, but all these small businesses have been shut down for months. What are these people going to do?
yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm.
And the reason they're shut down is because the government that they paid taxes to refused to prepare for a pandemic. Forget whether we responded in time. What's the response? There is no response. The response is to tell everybody to stay home. That's your plan? That's what we paid for? You don't have cotton swabs? You can't make a test? And so because you don't have cotton swabs in a test, everybody's got to stay home? Fuck you.
Nancy Pelosi will tell you to calm down. She has a plan.
Nancy Pelosi is the same person that gave you the healthcare system that's failed right now. So that's that she can stand that her claim to fame is to put her in the same room with Clinton, Obama, and Biden with a $4 trillion healthcare system charging double what the world pays for a healthcare system that is useless to provide cotton swabs at a test. Multi-trillion-dollar government, multi-trillion-dollar healthcare system, and they can't provide cotton swabs in a test?
I'm with you, buddy.
And so their alternative, after collecting those trillions, is to scorch the entire economy?
And blame the village idiot.
And blame the village idiot. And offer an alternative senile rapist.
That's right. Who is offering no solutions to our problems right now. Joe Biden doesn't have a solution in sight. Not one idea, not a solution in sight. But Bernie Sanders is going to
no UBI from him, and no Medicare for all from him.
No. In fact, a promise to veto
no new
Medicare
business
for all.
Formation, no cotton swab, no test, no working economy, nothing. Just make fun of the village idiot.
Yep.
Do you know how low on the totem pole you have to be if your only claim to fame is you make fun of the village idiot? We've made a national industry of ridiculing the village idiot.
I know. That's why I don't do it.
And then everybody feels better about themselves because they're like, well, look at the village idiot. He wants you to drink bleach. Well, of course he wants you to drink bleach. He's the village idiot.
I know, and there are news shows who their entire business model is making fun of Donald Trump and talking about what a maniac he is instead of talking about the problem. And
entire networks,
MSNBC, online too. Entire 59 minutes out of their 60-minute broadcast, all about what an asshole Trump is.
Righteous, sanctimonious, holier than thou. Falsely defending the small business, pretending that this entire situation is Donald Trump's fault because this entire national healthcare system, or whatever you want to call our healthcare system, and this entire political apparatus refuse to do anything to prepare for a known risk that is a pandemic as we allocate trillions in Defense Department spending.
I think it's.
And we launched the Space Force. We're getting ready for war with the aliens.
So
but you can't get a cotton swab.
They're gonna build a Space Force to fight aliens, literal aliens from outer space, but they can't get a test for a virus in the United States, and our economy has to shut down. That's how corrupt this is. They're releasing more video of UFOs. And what are they doing that for? Because they want to spend more money on a Space Force. That's what that is. So, Bill, do you what? I keep thinking that at some point, do you think there's going to be a lot of wildcat strikes?
I'm not even going to begin to try to predict the social crisis. I think we can run a list of how this is going to manifest. I'm genuinely hopeful that, again, that the Israelis or somebody smarter than us comes up with a really meaningful intervention on the biological crisis and allows this economy a chance to function sooner than later so that the worst of the social crisis can be averted. But you could list 1,000 negative social consequences, and my only answer is going to be, could be. But I hope not.
So here's my final story for today for Dylan Ratigan, our financial expert. Award-winning New York Times bestselling author, award-winning Bloomberg journalist. This is from Jennifer Jacobs. She tweeted out, breaking, Trump plans to order meat processing plants to stay open, declaring them critical infrastructure under Defense Production Act. This order is meant to stave off shortages of beef, chicken, and eggs, pork. Plant closures could have shut down as much as 80% of capacity, sources say. And then she also tweeted out, Trump had signaled in the Oval Minutes he'd sign an executive order today aimed at Tyson Foods' liability. The order, though, will not be limited to Tyson's, I'm told. So, one more. She says the White House is working with the Labor Department on safety guidance for meat processing plant workers. Administrations may recommend workers most at risk for coronavirus, such as those with underlying conditions, stay home. Administration is trying to make sure workers have face shields, masks, and access to tests. This is months after this has started. They're still trying to make sure so they got $5 trillion out the door to the richest motherfuckers, but they still haven't gotten masks and safety stuff to the essential workers. And then this guy says
they wouldn't even use the Defense Production Act to mandate the production of PPE, but they're talking about using it to force people to go kill chickens in factory farms.
Yes. So let me just read this to you. This guy says, putting aside how fucked up this is for workers, how is this supposed to work when the entire workforce of a factory is infected with COVID-19? Get off that ventilator and slice up some more bacon. So that's what's happening, is that they're getting sick inside of these factories. And that's what's happening. And then someone else said,
by the way, those factory farms, I don't think they're any better than the wet markets in China.
Right.
We talk about the wet markets in China, which are horrendous and clearly a breeding ground for global horrors. But so too are the U.S. factory farms. I mean, I've been pushing for decentralized, distributed resources ever since I left NBC nearly 10 years ago. And there is no greater example of the liability of centralized production than obviously the supply chain in China, or the horrors of American factory farming, which is disgusting to begin with.
So one more tweet I'll read to you. It says, the meat processing plants were closed because a huge amount of workers fell ill to COVID. So Trump wants to change the rules so that the plants can infect as many workers as they want without penalty. This is not capitalism. This is murder. So what they're also doing is they're getting rid of the liability for the company. So if you go back to work and you get COVID, I know what they're doing in Illinois. If you go to work and you get COVID, that's a workman's comp claim. And that's it. That's a workman's comp claim. Send it there and it's over. So that means no lawsuits. And that's what Trump is doing here. They're
got to protect the mass meat supply.
Right. So they're
instead of using this as an opportunity to completely restructure, honestly, at the very least, if you're going to annihilate the global economy and with all of its flaws, use annihilation as an opportunity to do a restructuring that's that moves towards the decentralization that's necessary for the world to survive, don't indemnify the factory farm to slaughter people along with chickens, and so that to make sure everybody it does. Come on.
So my question is, what happens when they open up the chicken factory and nobody shows up to work? I wonder if that will happen.
That's all. That's my. I second your question, sir.
Because there was one factory in Nebraska had 47 people sick with COVID in that one factory.
Listen, you're talking to a man who was bit by the Lone Star tick. And as a result, meat is no longer a subject of interest for me. Welcome to my world.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's...
As a political... I mean, I would say that the one thing about that whole meat DPA story, everything you just said, is it's completely aligned with everything else it's very much in alignment with the American policy vector.
Yeah, exploit the people with no power and then funnel that money upward while leaving everybody in a slave-like state.
That's right.
That's America, baby.
But that's every country in the world. It's just the illusion that America wasn't that is the issue.
Hey, Dylan, let me ask you real quick. I had a guy on yesterday, friend of the show, Danny Haifong. He writes for the Black Agenda Report. And he has positive things to say about the Chinese government. He was saying, now, I don't know if you know anything about this, and if you don't, you don't have to comment, but let me just throw it out there in case you want to. He just came back from China, and he said that China actually, their government actually works. That if a mayor isn't...
I've heard this whole story, and I know the line, and it's absolutely true in the sense that when you have a dictatorship with a plan, they get things done. They're not flip-flopping back and forth constantly, but that comes at a even further restriction of freedom. I mean, I have a good friend of mine whose accountant lives in Wuhan. And for all of our complaints about lockdown, I don't know anybody on lockdown in America who has physically not left. You've gone into your backyard.
Right.
You've been to the grocery store. You've walked around the block. In Wuhan, so yes, the functionality of that. Listen, Moscow is a spectacular city, spectacular, arguably the most beautiful and fabulous city in all of Europe. But as you move further towards the totalitarian arc, the gloss of functionality that is there, price of that is an increasingly aggressive diminishment of human rights to the point of removing people from society and killing them systematically. And America, to its credit, is not there at this point, although we are now canceling elections. And we're now forcing labor to go into a virus-infected meat farm. So we're on the spectrum.
Yes.
But even for my hyperbole, that there's a darkness that exists in the functionality of those dictatorships. There's a liberalism that still exists in this country and our ability to interact and do things and even protest as fools with guns. It does not exist in other places.
Hey, speaking of that election, I'm being told that they're still doing the down ballot elections.
No, they are. They canceled the presidential, but that doesn't mean... Listen. Don't get me started. Okay, good for you. I'm aware.
No. The point I want to make is this. That New York's down ballot primaries are still taking place on the same day as the presidential primary was supposed to take place. New York recently moved to waive the excuse requirement to vote absentee and mail absentee ballot applications to every registered voter, and this will dampen down ballot turnout. So what is that? But why would they do this, right? Why would they want to dampen down? Why would they?
Everybody knows why they did it, because they don't want. They're afraid a lot of people in New York are going to vote for Bernie because his name's on the ballot,
right?
And they're afraid that that's going to be humiliating for Joe Biden, and they're afraid that's going to create more leverage for the Bernie people at the convention. It's obvious why they did it.
Well, there's also one more reason.
They're trying to. Everybody's protecting the senile rapist in the basement any way they can.
And that is also
because they're terrified of the village idiot. When the reason the village idiot is the president is because they did this last time with Hillary Clinton.
I know, but so you're correct. Those are all correct reasons. But there's one more reason, as Stephen Wolf says. One can't help but see this as New York Board of Elections trying to protect machine Democrats from insurgent progressive primary challengers. It's the same reason why New York had long separated state primary dates from federal ones until this year. So what they want to do is they want to suppress progressives or people coming out.
The Cuomo mafia.
Yeah.
Andrew Cuomo is one of the most evil and nefarious politicians in America, and I've paid him some compliments for his presentation in the early stages of the virus, which I believe he's carried himself well. He's well suited to that particular thing, but he's a terrible, terrible, terrible person and a brutal politician. And by the way, he and Bill de Blasio completely fucked up New York. The reason New York is if you look, Seattle had the virus at the same time that New York had the virus, and Seattle did the super lock early and put it away. And Cuomo and de Blasio went along with the same strategy as the village idiot, which is to let it ride well into the middle of March.
Yeah.
Of all the politicians, I would honestly give Gavin Newsom the most credit on the virus, in addition to the folks up in Seattle for being early and aggressive and clear. Cuomo's been doing cleanup after the fact, and again, he's done a better job as a press conference giver. But
so you see what the Democratic machine does, right? So they're not just hostile to lefties or progressives; they are extinguishers of them, right? And so I've been trying to urge people to get away from the Democratic Party since Hillary Clinton, right, in 2016. And everyone told me I'm crazy and whatever. And then you ran as a Democrat. So
only because there's only 2 ways on the ballot, and it was the worst decision of my life.
Okay.
No joke. It was the worst. I'm not being sarcastic.
I know.
The worst decision of my life.
I hear you. All right. Well, Dylan, anything else you want to say? I'm glad
I've said enough.
I'm glad I got you upset today.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about it. You finally got under my skin. Took 6 weeks.
It took 6 weeks, but I did it. I'm glad. It makes me feel better.
You found a way to push the right buttons. You got me all worked up.
Good.
I'm going to go do some yoga now.
All right.